Well, we're going to leave tomorrow because of the 9 o'clock start and the short flight and the good weather in the Mid-East, Midwest. Not getting hit like the Northeast. So Notre Dame has a great home court advantage, one of the best in college basketball, along with Kansas and people like that. So it's a big challenge for our guys. I think they're up for it. And we've had some really, really tight ball games and with Notre Dame, a lot of exciting ones. And this should be another exciting one.
What is it about you guys in Notre Dame that seems to always have these classic games? Do you think can you pinpoint anything?
You know, we have even when we got blown out, I think the year we were #1 seed. Yeah, and they shoot the ball great. They have great duplication of players each year in terms of how they fit into the roles they want to play. And I just think that both teams really get after each other at different phases of the game, and they've just been very close ball game.
How's Wayne's injury? Is he?
I think he's over his injury now. I think he's probably as close to 100% as he can possibly be.
Is there an advantage maybe to leave tomorrow with all the game day hoopla? I know it deals with mostly the home team, but kind
We
of.
want to leave because it's a 9 o'clock game. It's just, you get really stale just sitting around doing nothing. And you can't get out of the hotel. There's not a whole lot to do. So.
Like Brady called it a service with the GameDay people up there. How does that play into the visiting team, or even does it? I mean,
I don't think it does. It's a little more emotion in terms of the crowd, but it doesn't affect us negatively or positively in any way.
Look at a guy like Cooley. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, yet he's still averaging a double-double. What makes him so formidable?
Well, he's very strong. He's athletic. He's like Harron Godey and that type of player. He's got very good hands. He's equally good at the defensive end in terms of rebounding, but his hands are very good.
Rick, recently Jay Billis was talking about how he thinks in an interview that college basketball is kind of long-term going to be hurt if the game doesn't become more aesthetically pleasing, scoring more. He thinks the officials have a lot to do with that. What are your thoughts about the future of the game with the low scoring right now?
Well, Jay's tough on officials, and sometimes he's right and sometimes he's wrong, because I watched the game on tape. But that being said, I'll take you back to, I was asked to join a committee put together by David Stern in the NBA to increase scoring. I remember Pat was on it, Larry Brown, a bunch of coaches, general managers, to try and enhance scoring in the league. Because everybody was under, I think there were only 2 teams over 100 points. When I coached the Knicks back in '87, we averaged 116.8 points per game, and we were 3rd in the league in scoring. So everybody, and we were thinking about the zone, 8 seconds in the backcourt, and how to pick up the pace of the game and score more points. In reality, what was happening is the play was too physical, and they weren't calling enough fouls. The reason points have come back in the NBA is they're calling more fouls. The game is stopped. It is a longer game, but more points are being scored because more freedom of movement. You can't put your hands on players. Back in the old days when you could armbar people and stand people up, so Jay is right in that premise. You have to have freedom of movement. So if I go to cut off a screen, I can't have a forearm stopping me from cutting or screening. So he's 100% right along those lines. On the other hand, you don't want a game that constantly your best players are put on the bench because of a ticky-tack foul. We've had 5 of them this year where Gorky Zhang and Peyton Siva on the bench and barely were they touched. So that's the flip side of that. So you've got to make sure you call fouls that lead to freedom of movement and not ticky-tack fouls in that situation. But he is right in his premise that something must be done to create more offensive basketball. One of the other reasons why scoring is down, the leading field goal percentage team in the Big East is Notre Dame. Now, when I tell you their percentage, you're going to say, I can't believe it's that low, and half the teams are in the 30 percentile. 45% is the leading field goal. You would never see that in the past. It's because all the technology leads to defense and leads to stopping people. and leads to having every play there and how you stop them and you choreograph your defense to stop people. Where we as coaches have to get better is how to choreograph our offenses to go against those defenses. And certainly create more fast break opportunities for that. But the referees have a lot to do with it, technology has a lot to do with it, and I agree with them that we have to pick up the pace, but you have to make the right calls and not the ticky-tack ones. The ones that lead to freedom, the constant pushing in the back, the constant standing up of screens, standing up of cutters. If I'm cutting off a back screen and I get stood up, that's a foul, and they miss that a lot in college basketball.
That being said, I mean, he said that a lot of coaches now are coaching their players to kind of foul in that way, the ways you get. Do you tell your guys, hey, they're not going to call this type of a thing? So is that an advantage that you would look at defensively?
You know, we don't do that, and it's not because we don't believe in it. We concentrate more on stepping up to people off the bounce. We don't stand cutters up too much. We don't do a whole lot of that. There's a few teams that do that in the league, but we're not one of them.
Does Notre Dame do that?
No, they don't.
You know?
No.
You were saying kind of refs define the game. Do you, when you find out who is reffing the game, do you maybe say, hey, let's be a little bit more careful today, or?
You know, I think we have very good referees. One of the best officials, he goes to the Final Four, is called the ticky-tack foul on Peyton. See, he knew he made a mistake. He knew that. So I didn't get after him because he's a good enough official to know when you make a mistake. And it's the same thing with Gorky Zhang, making a misrecall. Like, I remember Montrezl Harrell made a great offensive rebound move, didn't touch the guy, faked at him, and they called over the back. You have to, one of the toughest things about officials, you have to call what you see. You can't assume, like on a fast break, there's a 2-on-1 break, and you're a 50-year-old man, you're trying to outrun these young kids, and you come out and go N1, and nobody even touched him, he just gave a phantom wave, and you think it looks good coming out and going N1. So it's those type of things you don't need.
From your perspective, that Russ Smith dunk, did you know he had that in him?
Oh, I thought the one at Memphis was much better than that. That was, like I told him, any 5'11", 6-foot guard in the streets of New York can do what he did. And I meant it too. That was not a great dunk. If you watch it on, it was not a big, but the one in Memphis where he stole the ball, just took one step and dunked it. Not Memphis, Western Kentucky, Western Kentucky. That was a dunk. But the funny part about what Russ did after the game, he's all jacked up because of that, that dunk. And he said, "Coach, can I speak to you?" What's this clown going to say now? I said, "Sure, Russ, come on back here in my room." He said, "I know we're getting in late, but when you get home, make sure you turn on SportsCenter because I will be at the top." I said, "I'll make sure I do that, Russ."
Was he? Did you see?
Yeah,
it?
number 7.
He has been finishing a little bit more with authority at times, at the rim. Is that just a product of what he was able to do in the offseason?
He always did. He was slowed by that bad ankle injury he had, and but Russ is a very good athlete. He can jump. He's very fast. He's got quick hands.
At one point, you said you were maybe considering pressing even off of misses. Is that something that's still in the
I toyed with it against a certain opponent. The problem with that CL is if you do that, you're probably going to get a lot of your players in foul trouble. But if you were playing a certain opponent, you could do it in a specific game. You don't want to do it as a steady diet because you probably won't have your best players in the game in the last 5 minutes.
What's your analysis now of your zone and man-to-man defenses?
It's improved dramatically over the last 3 weeks. Both have been very good. But our zone is a man-to-man. It's not a typical zone is a Syracuse zone. Notre Dame plays a good zone. But our zone is not a zone.
Is it similar to matchup, or
It would take too long to get somebody
we wouldn't understand what
little
you're telling
knowledge of
me.
basketball as you to explain it.
But with the zone, improving, what's kind of been behind the fellas maybe last
I think a lot of it, whatever defense you play, it's really understanding the strengths of the other team, where they're going to score, how they're going to score, what players shoot the ball the most, what's their tendencies. It's really a scouting report with any defense. I mean, it's all about that, and we did that as well as any team this year with Marquette. they just really were smart against Marquette, offensively as well as defensively, and they're keeping them out of transition. So the scouting report has a lot to do with defense.
And Gordy has a game like you did the other night. He didn't score, but he was such a factor on the defensive end. That has to help everybody else on defense when he's back
Yeah,
there.
the last thing hurdle for Gorky is to keep the ball in bounds when he blocks a shot. So it's a catalyst to your fast break. It's because it's still their ball, and although it takes away the bucket, we still have to play defense. The block shot that leads to a fast break is obviously the good one. So that's what we're trying to work with him.
What's the key to doing
It's really to guide the ball, to block it and guide the ball and not go down, to keep it in play. Bill Russell was the greatest at that.
Notre Dame's had a lot of really good players. Not many guys have gone under the NBA, but they always seem to have veteran guys. How key is that to how good they've been the last?
Well, Notre Dame is typical of a Butler or teams that get 4-year players. So they always are good every year. There's great continuity. They don't have very many bad swings, in seasons, because they're always building with sophomores and juniors and seniors who all shoot the ball. And he just recruited a great guard that we wanted. Great kid, and he's going to fit in very well. Outstanding backcourt player.
That point guard from up in South
Yeah,
Bend?
he's great. I mean, he really is. And so there's to take Atkins and Grant. There's somebody to come in, and then they got Knight now. So they do a terrific job of recruiting the type of players they want for their system.
How much of it, they got veteran guards, how much of an advantage is that?
Well, so do we. So it's going to be a very good basketball game. They've got good interior people. We have good interior people. They're a better shooting team. I'm hoping we're better at a few phases of the game, so we'll see.
With the pro arenas and not a whole lot of home court advantage in the Big East, is this one of the exceptions where they've really got a strong home court?
When they're good, yes. I mean, I went in there one year with Kentucky, and it was a ghost town, and we won by 35 points. So when it's home court advantage is when you have a terrific team, and obviously because you're winning, the crowd is there. Rutgers has a very strong home court advantage, but the other night it wasn't because the team wasn't doing well and the fans weren't there. So it's a winning team with talented ball players, that's what creates it. And Kansas always gets that, and Notre Dame has it now, and a lot of those teams with those long winning streaks.
Looking down through, will this be the toughest road environment you face, or have faced?
This year?
Mm-hmm.
Memphis was pretty tough. I think the game day adds to the emotion of it. I think they'll be very, very excited. But I don't think this team, it doesn't really bother this team. This team is a team that if Notre Dame beats us, it's because they have better players that night.
So much talk right now about the curse of being number one, and it's kind of talk about the parity. Have you been surprised by some of the losses this week, Florida, Indiana, in those environments?
I wasn't surprised at Indiana at all. I have a different take on this. If you asked me who I thought should win that game, I would have said Illinois by 55-45 margin or 52-48 margin percent-wise. Illinois is the home team. If they're a good team, I think they'll beat Indiana. And it was going to be a very close game. So that game didn't surprise me. Maybe something like Florida losing the way they lost on the road, the way we lost to Providence last year. Those are the surprises. But when you go on the road against a good basketball team, and we were talking about this morning on Mike and Mike, and Mike said the question, he said, everything's March for that 1 month. What about the regular season? Isn't that important? I said, it's very important because you got to make the tournament. And he said, well, do you play hard enough? I said, yeah. At every level, you have 22,000 people. You have national television. You play your tail off to win and perform. But, that being said, it really doesn't matter in the end as long as you make the tournament and that you start to go this way come tournament time and play the best basketball. We got healthy at the right time last year, and by becoming healthy, we played the best basketball in March. But, when the Ravens got healthy, they suddenly beat the Patriots in New England, and that was the sign. First you beat Denver, and then you beat New England. Like the Giants, when they beat the Packers on the road, suddenly somebody told you that this team is peaking the right way and they have a chance to be a Super Bowl champion. Well, it's the same thing in basketball. In New York, if the Yankees don't win the pennant and don't go to the World Series, we don't look at the fact that they won so many games in the regular season. It's not a good season. So it is all about postseason at every level. You know, we probably had a few bad football games this year. I said FIU this morning, that was the year before, but we won the Sugar Bowl. And we beat the number 4 ranked team in the country, regardless of, I don't even remember the regular season, who we beat and who we didn't beat. We had the greatest win on earth. I mean, beating Florida like that as one of the biggest underdogs in ball history. We had an awesome football season. So everything is judged at the end. And in order to do that, you really got to play your best basketball. And to play your best basketball, you got to be fundamentally strong. And that's where when you see teams get better, they get better at the fundamentals of the game. And that's what we hope to do.
So is the Big East tournament kind of like that litmus test where it's like, here's where we are, getting ready to go on the road and all that?
I've always believed those tournaments are really, really important. Other coaches don't. I believe it's really important because you get more preparation time, short intervals, even more so than the NCAA, like a Friday, Sunday, or Thursday, Saturday. So preparation time, it helps you guys focus in. So we like to stay around as long as possible. I think at Kentucky we were 18-1, 7. The only game we lost was when we won a national championship. So I think it was very, very important to me as a coach because, you know, you lose first round and you go home and your confidence is shaken a little bit. You don't like that.
For you, for substitutions, you have very different guys at the 3 and 4 spot with someone like Luke and Wayne, and then the 4, someone like Shane and Montrez in terms of energy. And I know coaches say starting doesn't matter, it's, you know, where you finish. How do you balance that high energy guy and when he comes in, and is that game by game, or?
You know, with us, sometimes the best guys aren't starting. I mean, so many of you probably think right now I should start Montrez over Shane. You know, there's only 1 year apart. It's not like a senior freshman. But sometimes it's the mentality of the player. Montrez is not going to play any harder if he starts. With Shane, if he's taken out, will get stressed out over it. So they're only 1 year apart. So there's no reason. They're both going to play. The same thing. Wayne and Luke, it doesn't matter to Wayne. Wayne could care less. He's going to play now. He will start in this game, but it doesn't matter with Wayne. So it's just the mentality of certain players, and so you just look to get the most out of them.
How soon can you figure out what kind of a person they are to know, okay, they could take this mentally or they're fine? How long does it take for you to notice that?
You know, I think a few months into the season, it's very easy to tell the personality of players. You know, it's and who gets shaken. You know, we've been trying to work with Shane. Shane just gets, you know, he just needs to stop worrying about things and just play basketball, just relax.
Russ doesn't have an issue with that.
You know, Russ is, you know, he gets concerned when he was put off the, you know, coming in off the bench. He didn't like it, you know. So you would think that, you know, he'll say to you, "Oh, it's, you know, I was always 6 men," but Russ didn't like it. Russ wanted to start, you know. But so it's, you know, that you find that out with him, and he deserves to start.
I apologize for going back to the Billis comments one last time, but he said that he was concerned about college basketball in the future as a whole, really worried about the popularity of the game down the road. Are you concerned for the future of the game unless the officials figure that out? Does that worry you about the game 10 years from now? 5 years from now?
You want me to be honest with you?
Sure.
I worry about tomorrow. Really. You're not 60, I am. So I may roll a 7 tomorrow. So, you know. So Jay is a lot younger than me, so he's looking ahead for the benefit of the game. I will say that his concerns are well-founded, but I think I would be much more concerned if I was an analyst about the academic requirements that are coming in 2016, which will totally change the game culturally, totally change everything about the game. That is much more severe than the scoring of the points, which is important. But everybody, because it's down the road, they're kicking the can down the road and not talking about it now. So I'm much more concerned about our game there from a cultural standpoint.
What is the change?
Basically, and you have to have, if you have a 2.5 grade point average, I believe you have to have 1,000 on your SAT. Okay? And
What is it?
the scale now, I think, is 800 or 850, 2.5, you have a 3.0. I think, I don't know exactly the scale. It's a sliding scale now, but the requirements are so high. I think they're so culturally biased that it's a scary thought.
Are there any added concerns about traveling the day of the game, and is that somewhat alleviated by the fact that you did it earlier this year, although you didn't?
In 1996, almost every road game we took was the same day, and that was because basically the SEC, you didn't want to travel. You wanted to travel 2 minutes before the game.
For fans, I guess, because you look towards the future, want to be ready for March. Fundamentally, what should fans, or I guess everyone, be looking for in this game to see? What are you guys trying to improve on?
Well, like we talked last week, after you play against Pittsburgh, we had a major weakness in rebounding, and we went to work on that fundamental of rebounding. Our guys aren't the most physical group. The only guy that really loves contact is Stephen Van Treese. He enjoys it. The other guys don't enjoy it as much. And you would think a guy like Montrez or Shane would enjoy it, and they don't. So we started getting more physical with our play and points of emphasis there. Now you come back with the Rutgers game, and the emphasis coming out of that game was, wait a second, now you didn't pay attention to the offensive end of the scouting report. If you spin dribble against Villanova, Marquette, or Rutgers, you're going to lose the ball. So you didn't pay attention to that, of how to attack them offensively. So we talked about that. So you're trying each and every day, from a practice standpoint, from a scouting standpoint, to get better fundamentally. Now when you go into a tournament, the other thing is matchups. And you got to hope you get the right matchup, and sometimes you don't.
Probably Gordy's best game with you guys was Big East tournament last year against Jack Cooley. I think he went 8 for 8 and was fantastic. And he kind of talked about after the game about everyone was talking about Jack Cooley and not him, and it kind of gave him the edge. Could he get that back? With
The problem with that type of thinking is you got to understand this going into this game. Mike Bray is a very smart young man as a coach. He's going to say, hey, Gorky Shane, take favorite last year. We got to do something about that this year. So Gorky's got to figure that out, that he's got to be patient, just like Russ has a very difficult time figuring that aspect out, that if he's averaging 18 points a game, that early on in the game he's got to create passes and movement because they're going to stop Russ Smith. And every team's different, so that's where that mentality sometimes gets you into trouble. And it's that lack of respect, that only gets you a little bit, it gets you up, but I'm not a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in execution and fundamentals and those things. The us against the world mentality sometimes works, but not at Louisville.
Circling back to the academic requirements, won't that just drive more kids to prep schools, right?
What will that do? How many?
They just have an extra year of prep
How
school?
many in your lifetime? How many minorities have you seen with 1,100 on SATs? What does that do?
Yeah.
Is that going to raise them? I mean, let's be realistic. Over the years, everybody has said it's a culturally biased test.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that going to be? I'm much more concerned about. I think the way of Providence College and Wake Forest is the way to go. Not the SATs, not the ACTs. The way to go is, I don't test well, but I'm going to work 12 hours a day on this project and get myself an A. I'm just going to outwork you for that test. So I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get the best grades possible because I'm an overachiever. But I don't do well on those testings. So that's not what employment's all about. That's not what the job market's all about. It's not about who tests the best. Because I got news for you, that doesn't mean that person's going to be successful. So it's all about, to me, I wish they would do away with those tests and you want to raise the standards academically with your GPA, go ahead and do it, but not with SAT and ACT. That's just my opinion. I'm much more concerned about that than I am the refereeing situation.
Mm-hmm. Did Peyton perhaps turn a corner in terms of fouling, silly fouls after that Georgetown game?
I don't know. I really don't know. Based on the 2 games after that, you mean?
Yeah, 3 games after that.
Peyton's a very smart basketball player. Very smart. He knows when he makes a mistake. I have to give him his due, though. The 4th foul he didn't even touch the guy. So what looked like a bad play, how could you do that? The fact that he shouldn't even have waved his hand. How the official called it. So, I would say sometimes 50% of Gorky Zhang's fouls, and, he comes back to the bench and says, I didn't touch him, coach. I didn't touch him. And then you watch the film the next day, and he's on the money. Like 90% of the time, he didn't touch the guy. So I wish they would just get it right. Ref what you see in that situation. So I hope he is smarter in that situation. last night's game, Indiana and Illinois, at the end of a ball game, to me, as I keep watching that play, I was amazed at the pass, the ball fake and the long bounce pass. The execution was great, and you could say, Indiana played it wrong, but that ball was in the corner. That was some pass, to that guy. Perfect fake, because you tell your guy, get on the ball and do everything humanly possible to deflect it. So that was a pretty special pass.
Would you put somebody into the basket? I mean, the lane, there's tons of room in the lane and under the basket. I mean, would you?
We would play our zone in that situation that we do.
So it would be
I think
somebody
that
closer
was-
to.
Yeah, I think that was just a freak play. Just, I'm not sure. It was so bizarre. I mean, it was incredible that happened in that situation. Yeah, really, it was. But, Indiana's a great basketball team. And like I said, they're one of the few teams I watched that I think really is an outstanding ball club right now.
There were 3 games, bang, 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 for the South Atlantic shot last night.
Yeah.
A&M and UCLA and Indiana. Have you seen a year like this? I mean, there have been years.
Like I said, there are just so many very good basketball teams. And then there's going to be 4 teams that are really going to peak and get there. But this could be the most bizarre year we've ever seen. I think this could be the year where a 16 beats a 1. What could happen? Could happen. If it's going to happen, it's this year because there's no number 1 that's totally dominant. I think you see that, Kansas is as well a coached basketball team as I've seen in 10 years. And TCU, who's struggling this year, beats them. So, it's just that one night where that type of thing happens. And it could happen this year. It really could. If it's ever going to happen, it would be this year. Because a number, you're going to pick 4 number 1 seeds. They may not be the 4 best teams. I think you could, this is a year where you could see a lot of 8, 9 seeds and 7 seeds making it to the Final Four. So it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out at the end. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to be like this because everybody right now is, like I said, the best team on the West Coast is Gonzaga. They're a terrific basketball team. It wouldn't surprise me to see them cut down the nets at the end of the year. They're very, very good at both ends of the floor. So, and I could give you 17 other reasons why somebody can cut down the nets. So I think it's a lot of fun, really a lot of fun.
Anything else?
Okay.
Thanks.